So, good morning, everybody, and thank you all so much for coming along this morning. Hopefully, this is going to be the first of many, and we are going to have people coming and going because not everybody can make the full session. So, we'll have people popping in and popping out, so don't worry when they do. Good morning, Rachel. Welcome. So, today's conversation has come up because last week we were having a discussion after a debrief, if you like, after another particularly difficult and challenging community mediation. And I have noticed that unfortunately, a lot of our mediations that are coming in now are like that. They're getting more and more challenging. People are getting more and more resistant. People seem to be angrier. They seem to be a little bit more resentful. They are consistently making claims, counterclaims, more counterclaims back to the housing officer or to the ASB officer. We've had people complaining. We've had a mayor's inquiry. It has just been tough. And somebody earlier mentioned to me that they were feeling a little bit burnt out by mediations. And I must say, I feel some days like I'm getting close to that myself, because obviously where I manage the project, I should have introduced myself by saying I'm Irene Grindle and I manage the Tower Hamlets mediation project. So where I manage the project, I have a little bit of input in all of the referrals. And I have noticed in my other work as well, outside of the project, that people are definitely stressed, anxious, and angry, or angry, I should have said. So there was 4 of us last week having a conversation, and we were wondering aloud if global events have got anything to do with how people in the community are feeling, if it's having an impact on them. We were saying things like, during COVID, we were all out there banging our pots and pans, clapping for the NHS, trying to be as friendly to each other as we could, because there was so much uncertainty and there was so much, we'd never been through anything like this before. And if you remember all the way back to 2012, when the Olympics was on in London, I mean, do you remember that? Do you remember all of those amazing volunteers? And just everybody was happier. People were commenting about, everyone was talking to them on the tube, talking to them walking along, talking to them on the bus. Everyone was just friendlier and more optimistic and willing to just reach out and say hello to people. And I remember that because I loved it. I loved it. I went to watch the flame coming through, and I went to the parade at the end where all the athletes were coming through on buses, and it was just amazing. It was one of the nicest atmospheres, and everyone was just so proud that London was hosting this amazing event and that it was going so well. We won't mention that Boris coming down from whatever it was he came down from. We won't go there. And now things have changed again, and as far as I can see, they've changed for the worst. So we thought, the 4 of us in our little huddle, that we would like to have a larger conversation where we all just get to contribute in some way. Let me know your thoughts, let me know your solutions, let me know your ideas. But basically, one of the things that I'm hoping for is that with us all being mediators, with us all being volunteers, with us all working, trying to bring a little bit more peace into the world, one mediation at a time, perhaps we can start maybe ripples that may get out there. Something has to change somewhere. And everyone always says, well, what difference can one person make? Well, it's only ever been one person that's made a difference. And then people get on board and follow and change. So I'm hoping that our little group might become a bigger little group, and we might get more and more people joining us. And when we do, things might get a little bit more heated, temperatures raised, but that's okay, because I want this to be a safe place for us to have difficult and challenging conversations. So with that, I would like to hand over to you guys to just introduce yourselves and maybe perhaps say why you have come today, what has spurred you on to join our session, and if there's anything in particular that you want to talk about. Have a pen, have a pad, we'll be taking notes. So who would like to go first?
I'd love to, if I may. Irene, hello everybody. I'm Mira Razak. My real profession is I'm a doctor. I'm an anaesthetist for the last 35 years. I work in a very large NHS trust, but I've been actively mediating for 3 years now in community, and I do a lot of NHS workplace mediation. And I've been with Tower Hamlets mediation practice for just over a year now. And I'm delighted to be coming today because it's a unique opportunity for me to speak with all of you and hear your thoughts and help try and clarify in my head some of my experiences from mediation. And I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts about the global events and impact, because I think there is an impact. But let's see how the conversation goes. Thank you for inviting me.
Lovely, and thank you for coming, Mira. Thank you very much for that. So, who would like to go next?
Hi, Ivy. Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you all. I am a criminal lawyer. I've been a lawyer for about 35 years. Joined the Tower Hamlets mediation project. Actually, I can't remember. It was just after COVID, I think. The reason I've joined today is because I want to learn from your experiences to make sure that I'm not doing anything incorrectly, but just learning. As I always say to Irene, every day is a school day, and you always learn. I find community mediation really frustrating, particularly because it's on Zoom. But when it works, when you get that joint session with them both, and they're listening to each other and they're understanding each other's issues, it's absolutely fantastic. And that's why I keep going with it. I've often thought, oh, this is so frustrating, I can't go on. But when you get that mediation that actually works, it's a wonderful thing. So that's me.
Yes, thank you, Vi. So who would like to pick up after Giselle? Lovely, thank you.
Thanks, Irene. Hi, everyone. I've been volunteering with Tower Hamlets for, I think, 2.5 years or so. I also volunteer with lots of other mediation services and also do some private work. My background is actually in journalism. And when I was working as a journalist, I got involved with something called solutions journalism, which was all about reporting on stories about communities coming up with solutions to problems. This could be anything from mental health, domestic abuse, more global things. And it's obviously a really important sort of area that is quite neglected by the media because they think of it as just sort of happy stories, but actually it's not. It's like proper evidence-based ways that communities are coming up with solutions. And this obviously ties in really well with community mediation. And so I'm kind of interested from the perspective of what things we're doing in our community mediations that could be kind of writ large and help in a sort of on a wider scale. and obviously, talking about global events comes into that. So that's my sort of my area of interest.
Wow, Giselle, I had no idea, but wow, thank you so much for coming. You're going to be instrumental. So, who wants to pop in next?
I'll go.
Lovely.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see lots of people that I've known for many years. My background, I've been a mediator for about 10 years, 10, 11 years. And with that, I've been with Irene's THMP for probably around that time, 9 years or something. Just linking into what Giselle said. Yes, absolutely. The global events have an impact, and I work overseas as well. So I see both sides of things, although I've not been to the UK, but I've listened to, done some mediations on Zoom. And quite rightly, there is so much tension. Whereas before, when you were talking to individuals, you would actually get quite a calmish, with obviously some venting going on, which is where I think that some of the nuggets come out. But now there is so much venting, there's so much anger in just actually getting. And the story, I find you have to really listen so intently to get to what they're saying, because there's so much anger there that they can't actually express what it is, what's happened to them. It's all over the place. And as a mediator, you're really having to work hard to actually get them to perhaps calm them down in a way with how you handle them. Why I'm here is really, like lots of people have said, is trying to understand how other people experience that mediation, not just community mediation, but I do mediations, and I'm actually moving away from using the word mediation, but much more of a creative, if you like, questioning in trying to get to the root cause of it, because sometimes people still don't understand mediation, certainly overseas, but same thing in the UK, which, so I can't blame overseas people. It's been around. So there's a lot of anger. It has an awful lot of impact on what's happening globally. And people are just exploding, quite frankly, is my experience in trying to get them to a joint meeting, getting them to the joint meeting, and then it's, whoosh, hey, I don't want to see him, I don't want to see her, this has happened, and the anger is still getting in the way, where you're having great difficulty diffusing that anger at the joint meeting. So, but I'd love to hear what other people have experienced. So I want to hear what other people are saying, and what can we do? How do we change our behavior, our attitudes, and what other skills do we need to develop as mediators to be able to cope with what's presented to us?
That's a fabulous question, Nazneen, and I do hope that we will be able to find some inspiration from each other, but also I would like to be able to somehow upskill, ourselves to be able to feel more confident dealing with some of those really difficult conversations. So thank you. Right, who is next?
I can go next.
You can go next. So I've got you down as admin, and I don't know who you are.
What do you mean?
Oh, sorry, Tony. I thought it was the admin at the bottom. Sorry, Tony. Tony, right, off you go.
So my name's Tony, and I've been a mediator many years, having trained with Irene. I don't do much mediation these days. I've also been a life coach, but in my past life, I lived for 7 years in Lebanon. I was doing, I lived all over the world doing humanitarian projects. And before I came back, the last bit was in Lebanon, where I had first-hand experience of some of what people are right now experiencing. And I joined the group because, to be honest, since last year, I just haven't been able to even watch the news. I was so deeply, deeply affected, not only because of the traumatic events that we're witnessing and media take on it, but also because I was there. I've been in those situations, and I have 4 daughters, and we were several times under the bombs. And no one, it was not in the media anywhere. It was just totally ignored. So it is, to me, it's very emotional, and it just sort of, when you see an injustice and you don't seem to be able to do anything about it, it's very difficult. So anyhow, I can't bring any solutions. I don't have any. If I did, I would already have put them in place, but at least it's a conversation. And yeah, so I'm happy
I guess,
to hear.
thanks, Tony, but I guess all we can do is do our own little bit in our own little communities and our own friends and families, and
Yeah.
just hope that whatever we do, like that butterfly flapping the wings, that kind of thing, that's all we can do. Well, maybe it's not all we can do, but it's certainly one thing that we can do. And thanks for sharing, Tony.
Welcome.
Right, who would like to follow Tony?
I could, oh, go ahead, Asma. Go.
Right,
Hi.
Asma, lovely.
Hi, I'm Asma. Lovely to meet you all, both friends that I know and colleagues and new colleagues. Nice, lovely to meet you here in this space. I'm long-standing mediator with Irene, over 20 years. And the theme resonates. It's definitely one that resonates on a personal level. It was something that we were discussing. And through our discussion in the recent mediation, this came up. I think it's much needed. My background is international development and law, as well as other areas, but I think it interests me more on a personal and professional level, because already hearing from you, I think there's learning, but the thing I've also certainly learned within the first couple of minutes here in this talk, but I think the first takeaway straight away is the will. We're hearing post-COVID, global events are creating a charged environment, which is in fact impacting us personally, and then both in the work and the mediations that we are doing. But for me, this is a recognition of the will of all of us, of wanting to make a difference, and that kindness that, to me, like almost like a post, we've lived through something that we never lived through before, where we saw human kindness come together. And now global events are sparking emotions. And Tony, thank you for sharing, and it really moved me. But also to resonate, to say, which came up in the discussion, which contributed to this event today, is it almost feels like we need to go back to basics. And I'd like to hear more on that and share on that as well. But to go back to basics of human kindness in the height of conflict, was there never a time that was needed for human compassion and kindness? And I think that's the first starting point, that maybe we need to go back to a place of kindness, togetherness, and the will. And from there, whatever change can happen. So I look forward to being here and already feeling that space here. Thank you, Irene. for
Lovely. Thank you. And you've reminded me of something there when you were talking, Asma, which is, I mean, you probably all know my feelings on American politics because I bang on about it a lot. But I think one of the things that is instrumental today in keeping us apart is the internet, is social media, is all these conspiracy theories. So I'm kind of trying to make an agenda for us, and I think maybe I need to put that one in there, because that's what gets in the way of our human compassion, kindness, and togetherness when people are working very, very diligently to keep us apart. So thank you. Right, next, who have we got? Natalia.
So I can say something. So I joined Tower Hamlets Mediation in 2018, I think it is. But I'm currently spending a lot of time in Kosovo. And in addition to working within community mediation in Tower Hamlets, I also have a little mini community organization, which is Friends of Bethnal Green Gardens. And I mention that, I mean, it's a tiny little organization, but I mention it because in our own small way, we also try to do a little bit of social cohesion work through looking after a community space and getting people involved and working together, making their neighborhood more beautiful. And I suppose for me, I'm here because ultimately I think that we are the community. So often when I'm in discussions about mediation, particularly I must say within the UK, I see things are discussed in a way where we talk about something, social cohesion or whatever, like it's something outside. But actually it's us. It is us. And so I want to be here because of that. I also feel that we tend to silo things a lot. And I think it's particularly apt in a way that we're having this conversation during Mental Health Month. Because I think there is a huge link between health, or what I prefer to call emotional health rather than mental health, because it's not all in our brains. So emotional health, the levels of anxiety that exist within society at the moment, the levels of trust that exist between people at the moment, the conflicts that we have on a small level, the political issues, and I'm going to, how can I say? I should say, perhaps putting myself in the mix. I have worked in many countries which have undergone very serious conflict. I myself have been affected by terrorist violence very close to me. I have myself have been through very, very difficult times as a result of that. And so I've been, I think, really at the sharp end. And that gives me a particular prism through which I see things going on in the Tower Hamlets community. But I think it also gives me perhaps license to say something which might be a little bit strange, sound a little strange. There is a tendency to act as if everybody wants peace, as if everybody wants us to have good relationships. And I will tell you my experiences, that is absolutely not the case. And that fomenting discord brings benefits to some people. And fomenting anxiety brings benefits to some people. And I think that if we are to, as individuals and as a community, withstand that, then the answer can often be in terms of how do we build solidarity between us, among ourselves? How do we support each other as helpers? Yeah, in order to help ourselves. And so because I see these linkages, I went and trained as an EFT practitioner. I specialize, I'm a lawyer, I'm a mediator, I'm a restorative justice practitioner, but I'm also an EFT practitioner. I also teach, I'm also a yoga therapist and work particularly on anxiety and trauma. So for me, these things are all interlinked, but that if we want to build community outside, having these small space, safe spaces, or let me say brave spaces, I think is really important.
Wow. That's really something to think about. I feel quite moved hearing all that, I tell you. Thank you. And the brave space, can I steal that? I might use that for our future conversations. Let's make this a brave space. Thank you. Lovely. Right, who have we got next? Who hasn't been? Dave, do you want to contribute anything?
I will, thank you. I've been a mediator for about 15 years, just over 15 years. I'm a general practice surveyor by background, and I used to be a volunteer and trustee with my local community mediation group in Bromley, Kent, which ran out of money a few years ago, unfortunately. It had been financed by 3 local authorities and a couple of housing associations. I'm concerned that language, actually the actual language you use rather than the words you use, is probably the greatest barrier to communication. And as someone whose first language is not English, I think everybody should have a second language, one of which should be English, one of which should be Arabic, and one of which should be Mandarin. Because if you have at least one of those 3 languages as a second language, you can communicate with an awful lot more people directly. Otherwise, you have to communicate via a translator who may have their own intention of distorting the conversation, or even if they don't, will not have the nuances that you're trying to convey. So that's my thought for the day.
Thanks, Dave. Let me see now who else hasn't been. Rachel, you're next on my screen and we haven't heard from you today. Oh dear, Rachel, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Now you're on mute. Don't panic, IT gremlins. have a little look and see if you can find something that might work. We haven't heard from Ilan. New computer, bless you, Rachel. Ilan, would you like to go next?
Yes, I can do. I'm just a bit worried about the signal cutting out because I'm still on the train, so I'll keep my camera off. Apologies to everyone for that. And I'll also try and be brief. So hi everyone, I'm Ilan. I'm a Londoner, now based on the South Coast. Professionally mixed background, worked in finance and worked for the UK government in China for a few years. And my journey with mediation started with a master's degree.
Sorry, Ilan, did you say your
in conflict
mediation started?
resolution
Oh, we're
mediation,
losing
which I
you.
graduated from 10 years ago. So, oh, sorry about that. Is it better now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. So yes, I finished my master's 10 years ago. I did that in Tel Aviv University, and actually, you know, just reflecting on what Tony said and also Natalia. So when I was living there, there was a period, quite intense conflict, and there was 2-month period of serious violence. And there was also, I experienced myself living under rocket attack for 2 months, every morning and evening with sirens, and obviously connected to lots of people, Israelis and Palestinians. So it's something very close to my heart. So it's quite a difficult time for me personally, but certainly for people that I know in the region who are living under the situation. I started mediating in 2018 for Brighton and Hove Independent Mediation Service, and I still do that, although I'm employed full time. So I work for a sort of business promotion agency between the UK and China. So sadly, I haven't been able to do much community mediation recently, but I still do volunteer for BIMS as a volunteer mediator and conflict coach. What I wanted to mention specifically about the meeting today is that I'm also on the board at Mediators Beyond Borders International, and I chair the European collaboration region because they're based in Washington, DC. So sort of coordinate what we're trying to do in Europe. And actually, Natalia is also a volunteer and comes to the meeting to understand how community mediation could be connected across the European region to sort of amplify the efforts of community mediators all across Europe, and specifically in terms of how community mediation can support things like social cohesion in communities that are increasingly divided, certainly along political and other lines, religious, ethnic, and that kind of thing. So we're actually thinking about how we can partner with different organizations to try and make the case that community mediation is extremely valuable for the people who come to mediation, certainly, but also our wider communities. We're thinking about partnering with organizations like the Institute for Economics and Peace, which do a really great job of collecting data on sort of the level of peace in our societies. I think I've been involved with THMP and not really to a great degree, but probably since the pandemic. And, you know, certainly we are very much looking for people to be involved with the work doing at MBBI in Europe. So if anybody would like to get involved, and also maybe even THMP at an organizational level, to see what we can do in terms of making the case for community mediation and how that creates more peaceful societies. So that's what I wanted to say, and sorry for my bad connection, and lovely to see some familiar faces and maybe meet some new people as well. So thanks, Irene.
Thank you, Ilan. Aren't we blessed with the people in our group? I feel a little emotional. That's okay. Thank you, Ilan. And yeah, I think let's talk offline, because if there's anything at all that we can do as THMP, then absolutely, I'm all in. So we've lost Uma. Uma was calling us from India, but she said the connection is too bad, so we've lost her. Jeffrey, hello.
Hello, Irene. It's a little while, isn't it? It's lovely to see some more familiar faces and so on the call. Why am I here? There's two words that come up that get interspersed a lot, which is around interest and curiosity. I actually don't like the word curiosity very much because it implies a sort of nosiness and an implication of something other than having a genuine interest. So that sort of picks up on Dave's point about the nuance of language, and particularly the English language, which I understand, if you were to have dictionaries lined up, is something like this. And other languages don't have those words. So there's a richness about the English language that is great, but is also a trap that we can probably fall into. But what were the things that I'm interested in from this? For me, my practice, also, what's my background? So a whole career in working with people and organizations, organization design, tons of stuff of corporate organizations that say one thing and do something else in terms of their values and beliefs, whoever they are. And I think I have what some might call cynicism. I would call it a healthy skepticism about what people say rather than what they do. And so we can have all great big strategies and big organizations doing stuff at a strategic level, but at the end of the day, it's the hearts and minds and the operational stuff of individuals that really makes the difference and builds up to things. So I've written down the importance of relationships, which is at the heart of the stuff I do. And you can have process and procedures for mediation and conflict resolution, but so what? Because at the end of the day, if you can't get the relationship right, even if you're struggling with the language, you can overcome things with that. And trust and taking risk, and also around self-management. So those are some of the things that I bring to the table in a world where I think there's an awful lot of I think the current phrase, isn't it, is microaggressions, or maybe that's yesterday's word now. Maybe we've moved on to something else. So there's always sort of buzzwords around this, but actually when you strip it away, the human condition hasn't really changed. We like or don't like difference. We form an opinion of people within those first 5 seconds and spend the rest of the time trying to justify that. And in a world where, I hate to say it, there's still a bit of an animalistic instinct of some people want to be top dog, whatever that means. So the point around, not wanting conflict, I sort of get that as well, but I don't know about anybody else. But it seems that when I go out onto the streets of London, there is an angst and aggression sort of underneath the surface there, whether it's going to the tube station, waiting at the bus stop, and nobody acknowledges each other, or people are pushing to be the first one on the bus, or they're looking at their app and have no actual contact with anyone. So all of those things come to tell a conflict story, I think, as to where we're at. And before you even get into the words of things like mental health, whatever that means. So that's my bit for you, Irene, and everyone, and I'm really pleased to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Jeffrey. You did miss a lot of the earlier introductions, but it's been recorded so you can catch up.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks. Rachel, how's that new computer working out? Can we hear you?
Am I with you now? Yeah, new computer, literally yesterday. I'm a professional musician and broadcaster. And actually, I'm just hearing you speak, Jeffrey. I was just reflecting on one of my current musical things, which is I've taken up conducting a choir, which I was winged in halfway through last term because there'd been a big ruction between the choir and their new conductor, or their young conductor, I should say. And unfortunately, they didn't buzz in for a community mediator. So there was this, it was very fractious sort of, I could tell, but I just didn't want to know any of the background because I wanted to approach this with a freshness and come in and do the musical stuff and give them a, you know, good experience. They're amateur singers. I'm the professional in the room, and I just knew that I could feel that they'd been through such a lot. And at the end of the term, after 5 weeks of my conducting, they said, please, could you, the leader of the organisation who runs these pop choirs around London said, and other parts of the UK said, please, could you do this? Could you be our person? And it's really interesting because you can feel that the anxiety level has sort of changed in the room, but I'm also aware that I've got to now, I'm building this relationship and these rebuilding relationships within the group. Anyway, I wasn't going to mention that, but it's a very immediate for me sort of combination of lovely diversity of peoples, unity of cause, because we're united in music and so on, and yet also recognition that it ain't always smooth. Anyway, yeah, I noticed too a fraughtness in the general kind of community around me on the street, and driving around, and supermarkets, in shops, and I'm afraid, I'm absolutely sure that social media and the way in which people broadcast their own views on things and then are channeled, are receiving in a sort of the echo chamber of the broadcasters that they're choosing to listen to on the radio, the television, and on their telephones, which of course are this close to us all the time. They are just reinforcing somebody's ideas about themselves, their own identity, which is ever so important. I must tell you all about what I'm about, and also hearing what they want, effectively what they want to hear. So I think it's so vital. The reason I'm here is I want to be part of a conversation where we are listening to each other and recognizing difference, and yet somehow cohering. And I think Natalia made a really great, interesting point about fomenting discord and anxiety often being just people's way of wanting to behave. We can't always assume that people want peace. So that's a biggie. What do we do? How do we coexist? Thanks.
Thank you for bringing that in again, Rachel. And it is an unfortunate truth, and I think it's a truth that I'm glad has been brought into our space this morning. Because definitely we do have to kind of include it in our agenda, because it is so very, very, very true. So like I say, I'm making a little agenda over there and adding to it as we go. Mahmouda, I think you're last. Are you happy to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, I'm sorry I'm just a bit of camera shy. I'm new in this game, so I'm basically just here to learn. I've done couple of interpreting, and I think one of them was face to face, and it was really kind of like, it was because I was interpreting and I've observing the situation, it really made me think, and it was quite a difficult one as well, because there was children involved, and I'm just here just to learn from everyone, as I'm new, and I'm not confident enough to go out there and mediate at the moment, but I'm hoping this will help me in being brave enough to go for it.
Oh, bless you. There's that word again, brave enough. And to be fair, I think at the moment, it's probably going to be the backdrop of our conversations. And yeah, I do agree. I hadn't thought of the words before, but now that it's right here, front and center, I do see that we as community mediators, we do have to be brave. We do have to sometimes take risks. We have to challenge. But most of the change that we see when we're mediating is because of our empathy, because of our non-judgmental approach, because of our understanding and the way that we treat people with dignity, to our integrity. And if all we ever do is that, then that's enough, you know, for starters, for sure. So, wow. How is everybody feeling having heard all of the introductions? Because I know I'm feeling very quite emotional. And I just wonder, is that reflected across the group? Any thoughts from anybody? Yeah, Natalia?
Actually, I feel positive.
I love it.
I feel positive because I think that honesty is really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, when we have, as I call it, this brave space in which people can, you know, disclose things about themselves, that is something really, really very, very powerful. And I think that so many of these, you know, somebody mentioned people at the bus stop not talking to each other or whatever, but there was a story that really touched me from another Friends of Garden group near to the one that I run, where somebody in the group had sadly died, and they were doing some sort of memorial for that person. And the person and this is even at the level of a very active and rather successful, I think, community group. And the organizer was saying to the other people within the group, oh, did you know that this person had done this and had done that and had done the other thing? And these people had been working together in this community group, and they didn't know anything about this woman. And that really, I thought that was so, so sad. And so I think that when we make these brave spaces where people can disclose things about themselves, that's something very powerful and very positive. So I feel positive.
Thank you for lifting my mood. I think part of what I've been hearing is just how, like living in Shoreditch, you know, the kind of aggression that I see is so far away from what some of you have personally experienced. And I think I mean, I know Tony really well. We've been friends for, what, 12 years more? 12 years? I know Tony's story, and I also know Natalia really well. So, Ilan, that was new information for me. But it is, when the ugliness of the world comes into our living rooms on the television, and Tony said she can't even watch the news anymore. I haven't been able to watch it for the best part of a year. I get my news now on YouTube because I choose the snippets I want to watch, because I have been so traumatized by watching what was happening out in Gaza. And now it's exploding out there, and it's even worse. Before that, we had Ukraine, and that in and of itself was horrendous and still is. And I saw yesterday that North Korea are sending troops now to fight alongside the Russians. So where will that leave us? But I'm wondering where we take this now. I've got a little agenda. So we have the Middle East, we have Ukraine, we have obviously the community conflict, the people's angst, and it's interesting to hear from several of you that I'm not the only one that has noticed the increase in tensions. V, yes?
I'm relatively new to mediation, and I'm hearing from people who got a wealth of experience that when they first started, perhaps things were much calmer. But I expected doing this mediation, I expected people to be angry. So it's no surprise to me. So maybe I'm just out there, but it's no surprise to me that people are angry. Their home is something that's so precious to them, that things are interrupting their living space. And so I'm not surprised to hear that people are more aggressive, because I see that every day. But I expected the angst, I expected the sort of the irritation with us as mediators. So I'm just, as I say, I'm just surprised that the shift is coming to somewhere where we are trying to help them. But I expected that level of aggression. So I don't know. I'm not. I get what everyone's saying, but I don't get it, if that makes sense.
No, V, of course, you're right. And I mean, I've been doing it for 25 years. There's always been anger, always. And there's always been people who just don't want to be taking responsibility and fixing it for themselves and want other people to do it, and are angry at the mediators because they want somebody to fix it. And if we tell them we're going to help them to fix it themselves, they're not interested. But what is different now is the level of unwillingness, the level of aggression that I'm picking up in the referrals that we're receiving. We've had 3 new referrals in this week, which is quite a lot for us in a week. And they're all coming from the ASB panel, antisocial behaviour panel. Because more and more of the neighbourly disputes, they haven't been handled well, and so they escalate. And the issues that we are seeing, they've started to concern me because of the level of let me just say, I can think of another word other than anger, because anger has always been there. But it's impatient. It's almost what is it they call them, Karens, where there's this sense of entitlement that, you know, how dare they, who do they think they are? And we always had a little bit of it, but it's just escalated and escalated and escalated to the point where I'm not sure if I would ever feel safe sending our mediators out to do in-person visits in their homes again, because at least on Zoom I can assure that our mediators are safe, because that's the kind of anger that's out there at the moment.
Irene, what did you mean when you said the neighborhood disputes are not being dealt with well? Do you mean people between neighbors, or do you mean there's some external something?
So when there is a dispute, it's not taken seriously. It's not sent to mediations when there's first little rumblings. It's sent to mediators when they're beating each other up, when their police are involved, when they're smashing cars and windows. And by then, I've always said, we're not a 9-9 service. You know, we can come in when things are kind of at a level where they're still willing to listen and to say their part and wanting to actually improve things. But what's happening lately seems to be that people are more dogged, more determined to keep the fight going and to win. They're going and getting support from all sorts of people, including lawyers and citizens' advice, and they're getting people to write these really stroppy letters about all the issues that the person next door is creating. And then that goes to the housing officer. And then the next thing we see is a letter from the other party coming in that is also somebody has been assisting them to write this letter. And the housing officers are now using words like, we've got a new counterclaim, Irene. It's like, we've never had counterclaims. We're not civil and commercial. I mean, but that has now entered their language. So things are escalating beyond what it seems that even a very skilled facilitator can help with, because they don't want us to sort it. They don't want a win-win. They all seem to want a win-lose. I win, they lose. That's the only outcome here that I'm interested in. And that's what's different, Viv. That's what's different. And that's what's concerning me. And it was, I mean, Asma mentioned, so it's okay to say that Asma was one of the ladies on our four-way conversation last week. And that was a particularly difficult referral that Asma was working on. A lot of resistance, a lot of accusations, a lot of blame, a lot of judgment, no accepting responsibility, no trying to like, okay, yeah, I get you, let's cool this down. Let's see what I could do to improve my own life by sorting things out with the neighbour who lives either right next door to me, right up over me, or right downstairs. The neighbour that I'm going to meet every time I go out, possibly, when I'm in the local shop, when I'm waiting for a bus.
Can I say something on here? It's almost like a brainstorming session, what you're going to hear from me, in that I'm using some of the words that people have expressed here. There's a great deal of impatience, and I'm asking myself, so where's this impatience coming from? Is it because impatience of the aggression? Is it because of the injustice that we're hearing and seeing constantly? If I use the word drip fed for many years, which is accumulated in where we find ourselves. The three words that to me are integral to how some of the things that I just said before was, how do we, so I've had a sore throat and everything, it just, how do we develop the skill sets of individuals to take responsibility? There has to be some openness. Use the word, I've got honesty and integrity, 3, and the 4th one is self-consciousness. 3 or 4 words that people are not seeing. They don't see honesty. They don't see openness. And there's a deep lack of integrity for what is being shared about any particular situation. And to me, if we can try and address those and look inside ourselves in terms of when something is not like, I think it was, Jeffrey who said, about the relationships. Something, sorry, I've lost my train of thought, Jeffrey. There was, there's a lot of, and I know, having been in HR written policies, we have the best policies in place, but actually are they actioned? So we're not actually actioning openness and integrity in what we say and do. And somewhere in there is, I feel, perhaps something that we can use as an anchor to start developing things. That's my thoughts at the moment, because as Tony said, she's can't speak, and very emotional about that situation. I think there are a lot of people that to them feel, and there are other examples that feel that there isn't any justice in the world, There isn't any understanding. There isn't an integrity when people are saying things. It's developing violence and fear in people that is stopping people or encouraging, if you like, aggression and an unwillingness to actually deal with life and situations and don't have the patience to deal with it.
Yeah. Thank you. And I see, Jeffrey, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Irene. I think that's well put, Nazim, there around the relationship bit. So my ever sort of practical nature on this leads me to, well, so we sort of identified the problem and where people get to, and the heightened sense of angst or having to win, etc. So what are the sorts of interventions that, I mean, maybe people need to learn about how to have a conversation. Maybe some people need to learn about how mediation. And the thing is, if you say mediation, telling them what mediation is about, it's not about that. Because actually all mediation is a conversation of people coming together trying to solve some issues and solve a problem. I mean, at its most simple, it's that. But listen at the conversation that we've had this morning about the complexities of that. So maybe there's something about helping people go back to basics. I mean, I was listening this morning to Radio 4, and there's a new phonetics teaching. I forget what begins with O, I think, and somebody might remember it. But it's almost like we need to go back to sort of basics with people, and that isn't the right language to use, Dave, around it. But helping people to even begin to have conversations and be able to talk to each other. So there's something in there about that, because how are people doing it now? They're doing it with text messages, social media stuff. You know, how much conversation do people actually have with each other that's real life stuff, whether it's on a Zoom or even, God forbid, even in person, about talking together. So there's something around that, and it's interesting how our education system at the moment is looking at some of those fundamentals, not to rewrite the book, but there seem to be some foundations that are missing for people. Now, of course, that all depends on a willingness to want to engage with that. But I don't think it's a one-hit wonder here. And it's going to be some different things from different people. I mean, it almost moves into sort of therapy, counseling, coaching type stuff in a way for some people to get them to understand that. So that's what I would add to it, Irene, for what it's worth.
Well, I'm listening to you there, and I mean, I'm in agreement, you know, teaching people how to have a conversation, helping people to talk to each other. And what I'm actually, before we help them to talk, have to help them to listen.
Yeah.
Because that is the biggest problem.
Yeah, sure.
We stop listening when we hear something that we don't like.
Yeah.
And I mean, personally, I've recently had the worst experience in a mediation room in my life. It was horrendous. But unfortunately, the way that it was handled afterwards was even worse. And I noticed in myself, with all the skills that I've learned over the last 25 years, that I was so dysregulated that I couldn't listen. I couldn't hear because I felt so unheard myself, because I felt so misunderstood. Now, hindsight is 20/20 vision. And when I look back on a couple of the conversations, a couple of the most difficult conversations of my life, I can see where I went wrong. I can see where I went off script. I can see where I stopped being any sort of a skilled facilitator and just became a sobbing mess. And it was difficult for me to listen. And I turned down conversations because I felt I was in overwhelm. I just couldn't even hear anymore. So that timely reminder for me did bring it all back, just how very, very hard it is to be a party in a mediation, how hard it is to be in conflict, how hard it is to just feel ignored, to be treated unfairly. And then some of the points that some of you others have been making about some people just don't want to fix it. Some people want to polarize us, divide and conquer. I mean, look what's happening in the United States. There's so many people out there that are being driven by emotion. They're being driven by an angry, scared man, and they will do anything for that man. Anything. Rationale has gone out the window. Absolutely out the window. We're not thinking straight. There's no common sense. It's like it's left the building. So, yes, I have self-awareness of where I went wrong. And yes, I have tried to make amends and apologize since, because that is who I am. That's about my values. And I want closure on that horrendous incident. But it's taken me 25 years to get to the point where I feel that I am no longer upset about all of the conflict, all of the difficult conversations, but that I've done that, as my lovely V would say, every day is a school day. And I have taken so much learning out of that really horrendous situation, where I wasn't sleeping at night, where I couldn't stop crying, and where I had to take sedatives because I was so distressed, having panic attacks. So what I'm trying to say here is that wouldn't it be lovely if we could have community conversations where we helped people to listen to each other, where we could bring in some awareness and some skills and have such a safe space that we could have safe, difficult conversations without it all kicking off, without people getting so distressed that they can't hear, that they've stopped listening. And I'm going to shut up now because I see Natalia's had her hand up for ages. And V, I'll come to you after.
So lots of thoughts have been coming up in my mind as I've been listening to other people. One thing that I wonder if people know is maybe a amusing point. Do you know that Tower Hamlets, because I'm a Tower Hamlets resident when I'm not abroad, Tower Hamlets has recently done a social cohesion report. And they've given themselves, and Tower Hamlets' council has given Tower Hamlets a A+ rating. So I have not yet read the report, but I found that quite interesting. Maybe it's something to be read. So we talked a lot about hearing, listening, learning how to have conversations. I think there's also something here about taking responsibility. Let me give you a really practical example. From Friends of Bethnal Green Gardens. So there's a lot of drugs in the gardens, and there's a team that like to do litter picking, and they find loads of drugs paraphernalia. And they were saying, oh, we find hundreds of this, that, and the other. And I asked them, well, have any of you reported it to the police? Nobody at all had. And they said, well, the police the police won't do anything. So I said, well, do you want me to write to the police? So I wrote to the police, and actually we got a response pretty quickly. So I think that when I come back to the UK, it really, really strikes me that for years, we have been in the UK, various people have been saying that all the issues that people face are somebody else's fault. We've been trained in how to not take responsibility. It seems to me we've been trained in how to point the finger, in finger pointing, advanced studies in finger pointing, and that's always going to work against social cohesion. So that's one thing that I really see. I see Tower Hamlets as being a bit like at least my neighborhood, as having lumps, big groups of people who very rarely even see each other. Let's not get to the point of actually talking, listening, hearing, having a conversation, anything. They don't even see each other. They don't even recognize that each other are present, I think. I also think that there's a large dose of compassion here. I have a large dose of compassion, and I think that in a situation, we can talk about, if we take about the world affairs, underneath, the reality of the tremendous harm that is going on in different parts of the world, which impacts us when we see it every day and we hear about it every day. Our world has also become a much more complicated and confusing place. And I think that at some level that does affect many of us in one way or another. And I think the UK's position within the world has also become a much more complicated and confusing place. We have a reality that many things which give people security, like the National Health Service, people face daily frustrations with. And at one point, maybe we were being told the fact that this doesn't work and the fact that doesn't work is all somebody else's fault. And maybe we see, and when I say we, I'm not talking about the individual we, I'm talking about a kind of, collective we. Well, hang on. Everyone told us this. We only had to do this and everything would be solved. And we see that it's not the case. And that has a lot of frustration. And so I think that for me, I do have quite a bit of compassion within that, but I also think that this issue of responsibility is important. And I think that there are really many challenges that people face. I genuinely think there are. And I think that within that, think about how is our language, go back to the language point. For many years, we've had this language of rights, and the whole idea of free speech has, the concept that many people have of free speech is actually not in accordance with what our law actually means. The right to free speech does not mean the right to insult everyone you want. And so I think, this is very much an issue. How is it possible that we have people wanting to take the UK out of human rights conventions? And again, this was going to solve all our problems. So I just think that there's something here about compassion for the reality that things are really difficult, and also a level of needing to take responsibility and being brave enough to see where we are and our reality. I hope that makes some sense.
It makes an awful lot of sense. And I mean, the insecurity point that you've made, and even just bringing in the NHS. I mean, I hadn't even, thought about that until now, even though I know how many issues there are around accessing just what we've always been used to, just going to a GP, going to the hospital. And also, you're saying about how was it possible that people wanted to take the UK out of, and I thought you were going to say the European Union. And I thought, do you know, we haven't even mentioned Brexit. I mean, I think that's kind of where a lot of stuff started, that whole Brexit thing. First we had Brexit and then we had Trump. I mean, two of the biggest shocks, to world cohesion that's ever happened. And now they just keep getting worse. But yeah, I want to thank you all, because this conversation has been so useful and insightful. And everybody on here has been so kind and understanding. I love THMP. I really do. We've got such a collection of amazing people with values and have such high integrity. I love being a part of this group. And honestly, I thank you so much for today. I'm kind of recognizing the time, that it's almost 12, and I did say we would do 90 minutes. And yet it seems like we've only just started. So I did begin by saying that I hope we can do more than one of these sessions. And I'm going to, after this session, pick another date and invite you all again. But also, I would like to extend the invitation. So perhaps if you feel that there's somebody that could bring value to the group, then please do invite them. Let's have more people on here. And let's start doing a little bit of homework about the kind of things that maybe our community conversations could include, our brave space could include. I see your hand is up, Jeffrey, but there's just one very important thing that Natalia just said. I want to get a proper any of you will have seen my responsibility ball. It's one of the props that I use when I'm training mediators, because everyone seems to want to pass responsibility on to any other person other than themselves. And it's so important that we help people to start feeling comfortable, confident, and willing to start taking a little bit of responsibility. Fee, I see your hand up, but
I
Jeffrey's
just want
had
to
his
say,
hand
I
up.
just want to say something very quickly.
Yes.
I always think that as mediators, we start on the back foot, because we know that there are sanctions if they don't agree to mediation. And for me, in my analysis as a newbie, is that they're there because something has been said to them. If you don't do this, something may happen to you, or if you don't agree to mediation, or you don't agree to referral. So as we're starting on the back foot, they come to this process knowing that there's like a sword of Damocles hanging over their head. And so, well, if we can get past that, if we can know what was said to them in order for them to agree initially to the referral or to the mediation, we are not starting on the back foot. We're starting with knowledge of what was said to them. And that may then take away any aggression or the fact that they don't want to be there, they're made to be there. And that's how I feel about the process. I accept that some of them don't want to be there, but we don't know what they've been told. We don't know what the ASBO team have said to them. And for me, I like to know what the housing officer's remit is, what the ASBO team remit is, so that we understand their role. Because as you know, you obviously, and all of you who are very experienced, the ASBO officers, some of them are absolutely hopeless. What is their remit? What is their terms of reference? And so for me, everything has to be. I'm very practical. I just like to get to the nub of the problem and start from the beginning. And so that's what I would like to know in these meetings.
And V, I do love that you always bring it back to our mediation. And yes, quite often we do start on the back foot. People have felt are obligated to say yes to mediation when really they don't want to. But there are the principles, and the principles are there for that very reason. And one of the most important ones, other than confidentiality, is the voluntary aspect of it. And I will always say, you know, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be. There's no pressure. And sometimes just saying that, V, helps them to just sit back and say, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and we all say it, but what I'm trying to get over, in my view, is we don't know what has been said on the other side for them to get to that mediation.
Yes, I do hear that. And maybe that's something that I need to do, perhaps a little bit of training with our referring officers, so that we have better conversations there, so that the referrals that we get are a little bit more appropriate, and that we know that people are definitely willing. Let me just do the hands. So, Jeffrey.
I think one of the things that I say, I give the perspective on sometimes, is about mediators and people involved in this work talking to themselves, which is what we're doing today, which is very powerful. So on your point about inviting other people, maybe listening to what V is saying, it would be a good idea to get some, well, what should I say, not sanitized, but reasonably tame, or people that have got a good bedside manner, or at least are house trained, to be able to come on and behave in a reasonable way to the conversation, even if they are violently on the opposite camp to some of the things. So some of the things that V is saying, because I can imagine that you talk to 5 different housing officers, they'll probably have 5 different approaches to this, and have different sorts of pressures and so on them. And that's just housing officers, let alone other people that are prescribed or that are referring people to us. So I think it's about your point about other people to come in on the conversation. Will that give another perspective? So where is this coming from? So answering some of those questions. And it won't be a meaning of life one, because it'll only get a slice of whoever comes along, but at least it starts widening the knowledge base.
Yeah.
It's risky. It's risky because
it is risky. It is risky. And we'd have to kind of have guidelines.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about.
But I do remember back in the day, around the time of the London bombings, where were we looking at then? Maybe 2005, 6, 7. We were invited to join Newham. Newham started to have community conversations. Now, at the time, they had a lovely big room, and they invited people from the local community to come in. And there was a lot of venting, because you had a lot of Muslims and you had a lot of indigenous locals, and there was a lot of angst. But all of those conversations ended well, all of them. And that's kind of what gave me the idea to start something like that here, but we haven't got the facility room, a lovely big room, and I don't know how safe I'd feel with inviting a whole load of people into a room. It's kind of much safer to do something like this, I feel, on Zoom. But I am open if somebody wants to kick something off in the real world to attending. So passing the responsibility over if anyone wants to kind of pick it up and run with it. Asma, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, let me unmute. Yeah, lots of learning, I think, because I know I'm aware of time. So lots of comments and thoughts have been going in my head as we've been exchanging views. But one of the observations and learning, because COVID, if we're still reeling in the impact of COVID, because today's theme was about community conversation and global event, and nothing like COVID we've experienced in our lifetime. And if you like, my background is international development, and one of the things is if you have a disaster, you go in with kind of immediate interventions. Like this is what we, if you think of flood or something, you go in with immediate intervention. Then you get a period where crisis is out. Now, what do you do for long-term building? And in COVID, if you look at that, I mean, I did research on this with university when I was University of East London whilst I was there. But our essential services, everything that we know, our foundational services, NHS, and I'll use UK context here, but this is also globally, has been questioned. What we take for granted, so that safety internally as human beings has also been questioned, as well as like if you look on human development reports and things like that, progress that we didn't make, like if you look at UN SDG Sustainable Development Goals, progress that was made in key areas has also gone back 20 years. Now, even if I contextualize this within Tower Hamlets, because I'm also a Tower Hamlets resident, everything that we know that we used to take for granted, essential services, doctors, schools, lawyers, foundational services, have been shattered. But has it been rebuilt? What has that done to give that to accept, to say, okay, it is crisis, and schools are in crisis, everything we know is in crisis, but has that acceptance been made on a human level? Because human beings, we need to be hugged, we need to be told that spaces are safe, like a crisis has happened, okay, like post-war, okay, a crisis has happened, so what do we do now? What are the moves? So as human beings, on a psychological level, why are we still in crisis? Why is there so much angst? Has that happened? And I think, I mean, I work along, global context, but I don't see that happening yet. We've gone into global anxiety and we're in war and conflict. So I think on a local level, in Tower Hamlets, in this community space, I think this community conversation offers that safe space to us as practitioners or us as people to say, okay, there is this global angst and we're hearing it. And I was part of a research for UN SDGs to find out the level of burnout in voluntary services. And there was so much burnout. And this is what triggered this one of the conversations. There's so much burnout in services. People at food banks, people who are at the front line of services, burnout is on extreme levels. Have we stepped back to say we're all in burnout or we've all suffered? What are we doing? Have we done that human acceptance and measuring that we're in burnout? So that's a question. One of the other thing, and I'll just stop there. One of the other thing I was noticing, because I was hearing about the level of angst, is how has our culture and language of communication changed? Because along with COVID and war now, we're all in human communication, but how has our language of communication changed? With the onset of social media, it has changed because we're on Zoom now. How do we reflect upon that within mediation? Because, and I'll just say this because I know it's gone on longer than what I wanted to say, but I came back to mediation. I mean, I've 20 years mediation experience, 20 years plus, both locally and globally, and in diverse settings as well. Conflict has always been there. It's nothing new, and conflict brings progress. But what you know, have we used that measure of language? You know, and what are we doing about it? Because the most recent mediation case that I did was quite entrenched, but I found a level, because it was online and there was no account, there was a different account of diversity. I found it one of the hardest cases I've done. And I almost stepped back and I said to Irene, you know, I almost felt really, I questioned myself. And in 20 years, I've never felt that in a mediation. So maybe we need to just step back as facilitators. And I hear Irene. Irene is someone I look up to in terms of facilitation. And I hear burnout in Irene. And I hear, you know, so perhaps what we need to do is step back as facilitators, step back as human beings and assess our environment and see what learning we can then bring in rather than, and use a back to basics approach, because the progress that we'd made in maybe what I just use that in quotation marks, civilized society or society, maybe it has all gone back, and maybe we do need to go back to basics, ABC of society. And I'm proud of Tower Hamlets where I live. There was a huge community cohesion. Yeah, there is community conflict, but there is huge community cohesion evidenced by our gathering here today. And in Shoreditch, we were one of the, I used to live there, and it was one of the first in the country, she's now passed away, of housing initiative where we brought diverse communities together. We have done it, we face conflict, we can do it again. And this gathering here is a start of it. So I'm sorry it's longer than what I wanted to say, but you know, for me, this sparks hope.
Yeah, and thank you, Esma.
But this sparks hope today.
And I think one of the things that I've picked up on there that is vital, and it's something that I would like us to be able to do, and that is the recognition that we as facilitators, we as mediators, we do need support. We do need a network where we get support, where we support each other, because it is getting tough out there. So absolutely, thank you for bringing that up. It's gone on my agenda. My agenda is now about 4 pages long, but we'll perhaps pick a theme each session. Mira, you have your hand up.
Hi, thank you. Hopefully I won't be long. I think I'd like to go back into that brave space. And at the beginning of our meeting, when we talked about does global events have impact, I think as mediators today, I think we're all growing and knowing ourselves, etc., etc. But I think global events have an impact and can be conscious and it can be subconscious. We don't always know. And I think everybody we meet with, what they say and what they feel, not everyone quite understands, but that we have these layers of what's going on around us, around the world, what's happening in our immediate society. So I would like maybe in future meetings to maybe in that brave space to talk about how we ourselves and the people we interact with and have, we facilitate the normalization of language that we see in terms of, you know, the way the media portrays and our desensitization to words like genocide. 100 people have died in a bomb. When we see, you know, how when we see things on the screen, we can compartmentalize it, we can choose not to listen. We've all, you know, accepted that we're all like this. We can control what enters into our conscience and what doesn't, because there's so much out there. And about, you know, I'd like to talk maybe at one of our meetings, talk about the complacency that we're facing in society with people in general, about complacency of helping your neighbour, keeping the environment clean, you know, recycling, and also maybe what our current leaders are that we have around us in local government as well as around the world. Do we really have great role models at the moment? You know, it's and the way the media portrays them. So I know it's a huge topic, but I do like to go back into that brave space in our future meetings. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira. And I am so happy with today, with our conversations. It's really sparked so much in me. Dare I use the words, it sparked a fight in me for us to continue kind of having these brave conversations. So Natalia, thank you so much for giving us that word, because we are now going to start having brave conversations and inviting people to join our brave conversations. So unless anybody has anything that they would like to add, I think we can. Dave, hello, Dave. You have been very quiet. Come on, unmute yourself.
I was clapping by way of thanks.
You were clapping your thanks. Well, thank you for joining us, Dave. How are we feeling now after our conversation? Let's just do on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being depressed and sorry we came, and 10 being this has been really useful and insightful. So let's just have a show of fingers just so I get a feel for. Oh, we got 10 from Dave. Wow. 10 from Mira. 7, 8, 5, 9.
9
Wow.
from me.
And a 9 from you. Sorry, Dave, can't count. Rachel, wow, excellent, wonderful. And I'm definitely feeling like probably a good 8. I think it's been a wonderful start, and I have got so many ideas. I have got agenda items, and I think what we'll do in future is we'll possibly go with a theme, because probably we could quite easily spend 90 minutes talking about any one of these issues that's on here that has contributed to the angst that we're feeling, to the burnout, to the to it all. It's all been. Somebody apologized to me and they said, how's it going? And I said, actually, it's a little overwhelming. Because at times it has felt a little overwhelming, just hearing people's experiences. So thank you all for coming. It's been really useful. I'm going to end our recording now.